This happened when I was around 11 years old, and I still get chills thinking about it. My family used to live in this small town in South Carolina, kind of rural, but not completely off the map. We had a decent-sized yard, lots of trees, and a big old oak tree right behind the house. That's where my dad built me a treehouse. He wasn't much of a handyman, but he did a pretty solid job. It was simple, just a single-room platform with wooden railings, a small roof, and a little window that looked out toward the woods. No stairs, just a rope ladder. To me, though, it was my kingdom. I'd spend hours up there reading, drawing, or pretending I was camping in the wilderness. There wasn't a lot to do in our town, so having a treehouse gave me something to look forward to, especially because I didn't have many friends. I wasn't exactly the social type back then. My little brother was only 4, so he wasn't old enough to climb up there with me, and my older sister was too busy being a teenager to care. Everything was fine until that one summer. I'll never forget it. The weird stuff started happening in late July, during one of those brutally hot weeks where the air feels thick and everything just feels off. The first thing I noticed was the sound. It was just after sunset. I was lying on my back in the treehouse with a flashlight, reading one of those old Goosebumps books, when I heard something in the woods. It wasn't an animal. I mean, we had raccoons, deer, even the occasional fox. But this was different. It was a voice. Faint, but definitely human. It sounded like someone whispering, way off in the trees. I froze, holding my breath, trying to convince myself I was just hearing things. Then it happened again. Closer this time. Still just a whisper, but I swear I could make out a few words. Something like, "Are you up there?" I sat up and turned off my flashlight, heart pounding. The air outside had gone completely still. No crickets, no rustling leaves, nothing. Just silence and that low, whispering voice echoing from the darkness. I peeked out the little window, but couldn't see anything. It was too dark, just blackness and shadows. Then the rope ladder started to move. I didn't hear anyone climbing, but it swayed like someone had just grabbed it from below. I backed into the corner of the treehouse, gripping the flashlight like a weapon. I don't know how long I stayed like that, probably just a minute or two. But it felt like forever. Eventually, the ladder stopped moving and the whispering faded away. I didn't sleep up there that night. I climbed down, ran inside, and locked the back door. The next morning, I went to check the base of the tree, thinking maybe it had just been the wind. But there were footprints, bare ones, big enough to be an adult's. The dirt beneath the ladder was freshly disturbed, and there were toe marks in the soil. I told my dad, but he brushed it off. Said it was probably just some neighborhood kid playing a prank. But I knew better. The second incident happened 2 nights later. Same setup. I was up in the treehouse, this time playing on my Game Boy with earbuds in. Around midnight, I felt this weird vibration. At first, I thought it was just my imagination, but when I took out one earbud, I realized what it was. The treehouse was shaking. Very slightly. Just enough to make the wood creak and the window rattle. And then I heard it again. The voice. Only this time, it wasn't whispering. It was sobbing. Loud, heavy sobs, like someone in pain. It was coming from directly beneath the treehouse. I dropped the Game Boy and pressed myself flat to the floor, peeking through a gap in the boards. What I saw made my blood run cold. There was a man, bald, shirtless, hunched over like a broken animal. He was rocking back and forth, just sobbing into his hands. His skin looked raw, like it had been sunburned or scraped. Then, suddenly, he stopped crying and looked up. I scrambled back into the corner, shaking. He started speaking again, only this time, it was like he was talking to someone. Not me, someone else. His voice was strange, high-pitched now, like a child imitating an adult. I couldn't make out the words clearly, but I kept hearing the same phrase over and over. "Go back up. Go back up. I don't know how long it lasted. I must have passed out from fear, because the next thing I remember, it was morning. Sunlight was streaming through the window, and I was curled up in the corner, still clutching my flashlight. When I climbed down, the man was gone. No footprints this time. No sign that anyone had been there at all. That was the last night I ever went up in that treehouse. My dad thought I was just being dramatic, but after a few weeks, even he admitted something was off. One morning, he went out back and found the rope ladder shredded like it had been clawed apart. The boards near the base were splintered, and some kind of black, sticky substance had been smeared across the trunk of the tree. We never found out what it was. He ended up tearing down the treehouse a few weeks later. I'm in my 30s now, and that tree's still in my parents' yard, but I haven't climbed it since. Won't even go near it, honestly. Some nights, when I visit them, I swear I can still hear something whispering in the woods, calling my name. This happened when I was 13, and it still messes with my head. We lived in a small town in northern Michigan, the kind of place where there were more pine trees than people. My parents had just bought a fixer-upper on a couple acres of forested land, and even though the house needed work, I was excited, mostly because of what sat behind the house, an old treehouse built by the previous owner. Wasn't fancy or modern or anything, just a basic wooden box perched high up in a tall white pine. The rope ladder was frayed but usable, and the platform creaked a bit when you walked on it. But it held my weight, and that was good enough for me. For some reason, my parents never touched the treehouse. They were obsessed with renovating the house, knocking down walls, redoing floors, fixing the plumbing. But they left that thing completely alone. I don't even think my dad ever climbed up there once. It became my spot, my quiet place. I started going up there every day after school, sometimes just to read, sometimes to draw. It overlooked the edge of our woods, and in the fall, when the leaves started to change, it had the best view I've ever seen in my life. Then one day, something changed. It was a Saturday morning, early October. I remember because the air was already getting cold, and I could see my breath when I climbed up the ladder. But as soon as I got to the top, I froze. There was a door in the treehouse. Let me explain. There had never been a door before. It had always just been an open frame entryway. You climbed up the ladder and stepped right in. But now, there was this old wooden door installed in the opening, hinged, with a handle. It even had a little rusty keyhole under the knob. I stood on the ladder just staring at it, thinking maybe my dad had installed it when I wasn't paying attention. But it didn't make sense. The frame around it was rotted and warped, like it had been there for years. But I'd been in that treehouse literally the day before, and there was no door. When I pushed it open, it creaked, loud and slow, like something out of a haunted house. The inside looked wrong. It was still my treehouse, but the light was weird, dull, greenish. The boards looked older than they had just yesterday, like they'd aged a decade overnight. I stepped inside and immediately felt this cold rush of air sweep past me, even though the windows were all boarded up. Something was off. I just didn't know what yet. That night I told my parents about the door, but they brushed it off. Said it must have always been there and I just hadn't noticed. My dad laughed and said, "Guess it's that Halloween imagination kicking in." But I knew that door hadn't been there before. I knew. Still, I kept going up. Curiosity always beat fear for me when I was that age. Over the next week, more things changed. First, it was the carvings. Little scratch marks started appearing on the inside walls. At first, I thought maybe I'd just never noticed them. But they weren't random. Someone was drawing things. Circles with lines through them. Shapes that looked like teeth. Eyes. Always eyes. Then came the sounds. Every time I opened that door, I'd hear something. A tapping sound like fingernails on wood. or whispers, so faint I couldn't make out words. I started staying away. I didn't even want to look at the treehouse. But one night, something happened that forced me back up. It was around 2 in the morning. I woke up to a loud banging noise, not just a thud, banging, like someone pounding their fists on a wall. I sat up in bed, confused, and then I heard it again. This time, I could tell it was coming from outside. I went to my window, pulled back the curtain, and saw it. The door to the treehouse was swinging open and shut violently, slamming into the frame over and over again, like someone was inside, trying to get out. The wind wasn't even blowing. I grabbed my flashlight and ran downstairs. I don't know what I was thinking. I just knew I had to see what the hell was going on. I didn't even stop to put on shoes. I ran barefoot across the cold grass and stood at the base of the ladder, staring up. The door was shut now. The slamming had stopped. I climbed up slowly, one rung at a time. Every instinct in my body was screaming at me to turn around, but I didn't. When I reached the top, I stood in front of the door, breathing hard. Then, from inside, I heard something. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. I couldn't move. Then a voice, raspy, deep, and right on the other side of the wood, said, "You forgot something." I don't know why, but that sent me into a full panic. I nearly fell off the ladder trying to get down. I sprinted back to the house, locked every door, and hid under the kitchen table until morning. My parents didn't believe a word of it. The next day, I made them come out and look at the door. Except, it was gone. The treehouse was exactly the way it had been before. No door, no carvings, no signs. Anything had ever changed. They thought I was losing it. For a while, I thought maybe they were right. But 2 weeks later, I found something tucked under my pillow. An old, rusty key. I still keep it in a box in my closet, just in case that door ever comes back. This happened when I was in middle school, around 12 or 13. And I swear to you, it's all true. We used to live in a small mountain town in Oregon, very remote. Like, our nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile down the road, kind of remote. It wasn't creepy or anything, at least not at first. The backyard opened right up into the woods, and I spent most of my childhood playing out there, building forts, exploring creeks, you name it. My dad worked construction, and one summer, he surprised me by building a treehouse for my birthday. It wasn't fancy, but it was solid. He built it around this massive pine tree about 20 yards from the house, just past the clearing where the woods got dense. It had a trap door entrance with a rope ladder, a window facing the woods, and even a little wooden bench inside. It became my favorite place in the world. That treehouse was my hideout, my reading nook, my thinking spot. It was peaceful, just the sound of wind in the trees and the occasional bird or squirrel, until it wasn't. The first time I saw her, I thought I was imagining things. It was a foggy morning in October. I remember because the leaves were all turning red and gold, and there was this thick mist rolling across the backyard. I had just climbed up into the treehouse when I saw movement through the trees. At first, I thought it was an animal, but then I saw her, a girl, maybe 8 or 9, wearing a white dress. She was barefoot, standing perfectly still between 2 trees, facing the treehouse. Her hair was long and tangled, and her skin looked gray. Not pale, gray, like old paper or ash. I remember blinking a few times, thinking, maybe I was just seeing things through the fog. But when I looked again, she was still there, just standing, watching. Then she turned and walked into the woods without a sound. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I asked my mom if any neighbors had kids that age. She said no. We were pretty much the only family with kids in the area. I told her what I saw, but she chalked it up to a dream or a deer playing tricks on my eyes. But I kept seeing her. Sometimes she'd be standing in a different spot in the woods, just watching. Sometimes I'd only catch a glimpse of her dress disappearing behind a tree. I stopped going into the treehouse for a few weeks, but curiosity got the best of me. One afternoon, I worked up the nerve to climb up and sit inside again. I figured if I was inside with the hatch closed, I'd be safe. That's when I found the pine cones, hundreds of them, piled in the corner like a nest. I hadn't put them there. My parents didn't either. And they weren't just loose. Each one had been carved. Small faces. Some happy, some screaming. Tiny eyes and mouths cut into the wood with what looked like a knife. It gave me the worst chill I've ever had. I threw them out of the window one by one and climbed down. A few days later, they were back. Every single one. And more. That same night, I woke up to tapping. Not on the window, on the wall. The wall of the treehouse. I sat up in bed and looked out my window toward the clearing. The fog was back. And in the center of the yard, under the treehouse, I saw the girl again. Only this time, she was looking up. She was standing directly beneath the trapdoor, just staring into the boards, like she was waiting for someone to let her in. I couldn't move. Then, slowly, she tilted her head back and looked right at me. I dropped to the floor, completely frozen. My heart was thumping so loud I thought it would wake the whole house. After what felt like an hour, I peeked again. She was gone. The next morning, I found muddy footprints leading up to the base of the tree. Bare feet, small, the size of a child. The rope ladder was wet, and the trapdoor was slightly open. I didn't tell my parents. I just stopped sleeping. A few nights later, things got worse. I had gone to bed early, exhausted from not sleeping all week. And sometime past midnight, I woke up to something tapping on my window. But not the glass. It was inside the room. When I sat up, I saw the girl, standing in the corner of my bedroom, wet hair hanging in her face, bare feet leaving muddy prints on the floor. She didn't speak. She didn't move. Just stood there, breathing slowly. I screamed so loud my throat felt raw. My parents came bursting in seconds later, flipping the lights on. But she was gone. They searched the whole house, even the backyard. But no one found anything. My mom thought I was having a breakdown. My dad nailed the trapdoor shut the next morning and told me the treehouse was off limits for good. But it was too late. A week later, we moved out. Wasn't just the girl anymore. Other things started happening. Scratches on the walls, weird noises at night, cold spots in the hallway. My dad won't talk about it, even now. That treehouse is still standing. I looked it up a few months ago. The new owners listed it on Zillow. I don't know what they've seen or heard, but sometimes, when I close my eyes at night, I still hear the tapping. And in my dreams, she's still standing in that corner, watching, waiting. If you enjoyed these stories, please take a moment to subscribe the channel. Your support matters a lot.